Okay, so this is the Audient ASP4816. So this is a 16-channel analog mixing desk. It's an inline console, so that means that it has 16 channels that are for input, and then it's got 16 channels that are for return from a multi-track. So it's 32 in total. So here we have small faders. So these are our 16 mic inputs and then our DAW return channels. So we have our mic input, which goes to our channel fader. Then this can be routed to a multi-track input, and then that signal will return on our DAW input, our tape return, and appear on our large fader. So we can set our recording levels and then separately set our listening levels or mix levels. So we have two channels running in line into one section. We've got our two inputs. This is our mic input volume, the input volume to the channel, the small fader. This is our input channel to the large fader. This is our output level, small fader channel, output of the large fader channel. Then everything in the actual console can be switched in between the two. So for example, if I take a microphone signal in here, set its volume, then set my listening volume, I can then route that out to an output, have it be recorded, then play it back in my input for my return channel, my tape return channel. And it will appear here, and I can set my listening volume. So the two channels are called our mic line channel and our DAW channel. And previously it would be called a tape return channel, but in this console it's a DAW, seeing as most people are using DAWs instead of tape machines. Here we have EQs, which can be switched between. So we can record using the EQ and print the sound down, and then when we're listening back, we can switch the EQ into the long fader, this one, and then we can EQ again while we're mixing. In the master section, we have 8 subgroups. Here's our control room monitoring section, the oscillator, our onboard compressor, our foldback section, our stereo inputs, our auxiliary masters, and our master bus trims. So let's go through everything in detail. Okay, so starting at the top of the channel, you can see we have our meters. So we have a meter for both sections of the channel, the mic line channel and the DAW channel. We can switch between them, so we can swap this over to the mic line channel. This is because one meter is fully featured and the other is very, very limited. So you can see here, if we were taking something in our line input and we wanted to have more detail on the meter, we just press the meter button, swap it over. In this one, we're using the DAW channel input and we've got it on the meter. We can swap if needs be. Okay, so here we have the mic pre. So we've got a volume control for the mic pre itself. We have a mic line switch to switch between a line signal and a mic. We have phantom power. We've got a low frequency roll off or high pass filter, phase reverse, and we have an insert, so we can switch it if we have some compressor or EQ set up on the inserts on the patch bay. We can just press that and it'll activate that send and return to the compressor. Above that, we have our DAW input. So this just has a gain and a function to give us an insert. So we can switch in and out our inserts, which is handy. So you can patch up a compressor and have it running, and then just switch it in, switch it out, have a listen to how it sounds. Okay, so below that we have our routing section. So this is where we access the group outputs. So we have group outputs 1 to 8, and then if we press the shift button, we get 9 to 16. We can, by default, the short fader, so the mic channel, which is coming in from the microphone, is being taken in, goes to the short fader, then we route that out to our multi-track so we can record. and then we would take back in our DAW channel to the long fader. But if we want, we can route the long fader to the group routing. And as well, we can activate our pan, which means we could route to groups 1 and 2 and then pan between them. If we take that out, it will just send a signal direct to whatever outputs we've set. Okay, next we have our auxiliaries. So we've got auxiliary 1 and 2. These can both be set pre or post fader. For pre for headphone sounds, post for effects, and we can access the short fader or the long fader. Same goes for 3 and 4, 5 and 6. And then we have Q, A, and B. So these both can be individually accessed to the short fader and pre and post fader. Next we have our EQ. So we've got our high and low frequency shelves, so they can be switched in. And they can also be switched between the short fader or long fader. So you can split the EQ. And then we have choice of 10 or 18 kilohertz shelf, 50 or 100 hertz low shelf. And then we can cut or boost. Below that we have our mids. So we've got in and out to activate the EQ, short fader or up for long fader. And then we have fully parametric mid-range EQs, 2 bands with a Q. Now below this we have our short fader section. So we can choose our source. We can take the source from the mic input or from the long fader. We can route it to the mix, pan. Then of course we have our volume and our solo and mute. Now below that we have our long fader. So here we have the ability to flip. So we can actually send the mic pre straight to the long fader, or we can take the DAW input from the long fader. And you can see when I press this, it actually flips on the short fader too. Obviously we can activate it in the mix, solo, cut, fader. Now here we have our subgroups. So we've got 8 subgroups, and these can be accessed through the group routing. So when I group something, let's say for example, this signal is coming in on the DAW channel. So I'll press long fader, route it to 1, is now going to be going out group 1, but it will also appear on subgroup 1 by turning up the fader. And you can see it turn down. So when I route to 1, it of course goes out into my sound card input 1. If I route it to 4, it will go into the sound card input 4, but also it will go to subgroup 4. So that's how you access the subgroups. 1 to 8 are duplicated. Now the subgroups have a solo and a cut and access to the mix, and they also have inserts, but they don't have an insert in and out switch like the channels. Okay, here we have the control room monitor section. So here we can choose our source, whether it's mix, external 1, 2, or DAW, which are all available on the patch bay. Mix obviously is whatever we've sent to the mix. Then we have our speaker select, main, alt 1, 2, 3. These all have separate volume controls. So this is your volume control for your main, but when you switch to alt, this doesn't work. It's now this volume control. It's just something to be aware of. If this is turned up, this is turned down, you're going to get a big difference in volume as you switch speakers. We can also sum to mono and cut left or right speakers. So if you want to check your mix in mono, it's very, very handy that you can just press the mono button and cut one of the speakers, which will give you true mono, because listening to mono through 2 speakers isn't really true mono. We can cut the main speakers or just dim. Here we have the auxiliary masters. So these are just master outputs for our auxes. So if you were sending loads of stuff out QA and you realized, or let's say aux 6, you realized it was distorting the input of a reverb unit or something, you could just go to 6 and turn it down. Similarly, our buses, so our groups 1 to 16, these are the bus master trims for those. If you routed all of these channels to, let's say, bus 1, it might be overloading the output. You could go to bus 1 and trim it down a bit if it needs be. Here are stereo channels. So these are just for like taking reverb returns and stuff. Limited features. So you've got a solo and a cut. You've got routing to the buses. You've got access to the Foldback. And you've got a gain and a level and a mix button to send it to the mix bus. Here you have your Foldback section. So this could be used for outputs to headphone amps. And you can choose external 1, 2, just like we have here. Or control room, C or M. So whatever we're hearing in here. Or you can listen to just the Q sends, QA and B. And volume control. And you can solo that to check what is actually going out to that set of headphones. Here we have our solo controls. So if I solo something, solo will light up. Solo in place, so destructive soloing. An overall level. And solo to front. So we can choose how much of the background sound is in when we're mixing. So if we set it fully to mix, we will just hear the mix as normal when we hit a solo. And this will bring whatever the soloed instrument is up to the front. AFL after fade listen, PFL pre-fade listen. So we can change our solos to be before or after the fader. We have a bus compressor. So this is hardwired to the master bus. Very nice sounding. We have our master fader, of course. We also have a talkback section. So we have the facility to plug in a microphone. And then we can talk to our Foldback and slate, etc. So that's been an overview of the Audient ASP4816.